in some situations, when things don't seem to work out, it could be that that's the opportunity that you need to be someplace else. And when you get those signals and those signs, sometimes we deny them and we ignore them.
Yes.
But we need to take note of them. And that was a recurring theme that I played back in my head. Even as an entrepreneur, it was time to be someplace else.
Hi. Welcome to Make Minutes Matter. And today, I am so fortunate to have with me Wayne Brown, who is not only an accomplished business professional, but also a very dear friend and colleague. Wayne and I have known each other for a very, very long time, and we have a lot to cover today. So let's dig in, Mr. Brown. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I have to tell you, Karen, I've been looking forward to this opportunity for us to talk. Over the years, we've had conversations, but this is going to be a good conversation because I look at it as a culmination of our joint experiences, my solo experiences, and have an opportunity to share. So I'm looking forward to this session.
There's just so much. So Wayne, do you remember when we met each other?
I do.
All right.
I do.
Share away.
We actually met in the fall of 1999. So I took a job at Princeton Ecom.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, I was working for a strategic partner of Princeton Ecom. I was responsible at this company for building relationships with e-commerce companies. And I really had a good experience with the person I was working with. And I had an opportunity I was hired, and you were the senior executive head for the division. So I didn't work for you directly, but you were responsible for the department that I was working in.
Wayne was part of the birth of the electronics banking movement. The whole idea of paying your bills online, which now is like yesterday's news. Back then, it was very important to pull out your checkbook, write the check, put it in the envelope, put the stamp on it, and into the mail it goes. Anything outside of that was not acceptable. But Wayne and some of the creative energy that he brought to the space was really remarkably inspired to help people understand that this is the new way forward. So there was a fellow working for me, Steve Greenwood was his name. And Steve had met Wayne somewhere along the line, and he could not talk enough about you. Wayne Brown, Wayne Brown, Wayne Brown, Wayne Brown. And by the time I met Wayne Brown, I listened to almost 6 months of Steve pumping you up. I expected to see the Jolly Green Giant walking through the door, and here's Wayne. I'm like, you're a human being.
It was so important in the sense because when we could drive electronic connectivity up, then that's going to be a positive experience for the consumer, as well as from the financial line of the company. That's going to be less money that they're going to have to expend because electronic payment is always going to be cheaper than a check payment. And it was fascinating with regards to prior to coming to Princeton Ecom, kind of working a strategic partnership with Steve, where he got to get to know what I do and some of the experiences that I have helped to help this other company was what they were doing. So at the end of the day, he saw the fact that he wanted that value at Princeton Ecom.
Yes.
And so I had an opportunity to work with him. And believe it or not, from time to time, we still connect, and it looks at with regards to that. I didn't only just work at a company; I worked at with people,
yes.
And those relationships. Some of those relationships, a number of those relationships, I still have today.
It was an interesting time. There were a lot of visionaries in the space at that time because what we were trying to accomplish was just so far out.
Yes.
I mean, again, as I said earlier, today it's yesterday's news, but back then this was just so crazy that nobody could even think about it. And it really took people like yourself, like Steve, many of the other people that were in the space back then to really take that forward. And so maybe what we can do is talk a little bit about what that meant to us to be in a space that was really full of rapid change and the type of things that we needed to do in order to maintain some level of stability in our lives. Because every day was up and down and up, down, sideways. You never knew the dynamic of the industry just because there was nothing established. We were literally cutting whole cloth and putting these payment rails in place. So how did you get through, Wayne? What kept you going?
Even today, I think about that because it's similar to what I've decided to do with my career. But to establish that at Princeton Ecom, we were, in a sense, pioneers. Mm-hmm. I look at an analogy of what someone does when they move to a new country, right? So when they move to a new country, they have the land, but there's no plumbing, there are no buildings. And at the end of the day, you have to figure it out what to do. Mm-hmm. That could bring stress, but that also can bring excitement. I'm wired that way as a product person to build things that don't exist. Yeah. So having that background of building that doesn't exist to me is very exciting. So even though we knew the end game, we knew the vision, we knew what the result, what we needed to obtain. And that's going to be the ability for consumers to make payments in a digital framework, and realizing that the consumers are going to shift from using paper to checks. Mm-hmm. So knowing that, what's going to be the infrastructure that we're going to need to put in place? And one of the things, besides just from the product side, the whole aspect of moving electronic connectivity, increasing that, was really a side job. Mm-hmm. So it really wasn't defined within my job description, but I realized in order to create a value to the consumers, to create value to the company, we had to shift and drive the electronic connectivity up so that consumers can have a positive experience. And I think looking at the end result of what that's going to accomplish was motivating. Mm-hmm. And also liking what you do. Yes. It was a long commute from Queens to Princeton Ecom. I mean, I was remote, but during that time I was driving, 2.5 hours one way. What's going to motivate you 3 days a week in order to do this? Because you see the big picture. Yeah. I also saw the fact that as not only just for my own career path, but also as a team and as a company, we were doing some things that were quite innovative. A small company in the middle of Jersey. But when realizing that and seeing how I could be part of that, mm-hmm. and how even in my career 25 years later, I've drawn on some of those aspects, drawn on some of the things that I built at Princeton Ecom. Even when I left Princeton Ecom, I came back and with other opportunities that I've leveraged in the industry, it was enough to drive me to do what I did and accomplished at that particular time. Yeah.
And so for our audience, I mean, we're not here necessarily to, kind of tell the tales of old, going all the way back to the late 20th century to talk about the way payments were made. But the translation of all of this is that we are in one of those times again now.
Absolutely.
And so for everyone that's listening, as we sit here and we think about, well, what is the world going to look like with AI and the technology and all the different advancements that are taking place? That's the type of environment, the type of magic, yep. stress, imagination that was going on back then that Wayne and I are talking about. And it's not for the faint of heart.
No. One of the things that I see some parallels today, businesses and consumers have the ability to make payments instantly.
Yes.
It's called instant payments, real-time payments. So that means that I could pay a bill and that bill is going to be paid within seconds. Mm-hmm. So there are new payment rails that exist. And so there's a whole big thing about this whole aspect of adoption and what banks are going to do, what businesses need to do, what consumers need to do, so that they could be ready for this, and what they need to do as far as, initiate payments. I have drawn back from what we've done 20 years ago with this whole movement on home banking and bill payment merged to what banks and consumers and businesses are doing today around instant payments. And I've made some analogies. Mm-hmm. One analogy that I've made is that these new payment rails today, or what we did even back 20 years ago, cannot be built in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. It's going to take an industry to do this. It's going to take people, companies, businesses, and banks working together in a way so that they can enable this type of capability, so that their customers, businesses, consumers, and other banks all benefit from this infrastructure. That's what I've learned years ago, and I'm able to kind of, with what I'm doing today, lead that and have a share in communicating this through the webinars that we do, through the banks that we work with. So when I think about this is that the things that we've done whether years ago or a number of years ago, or even at the beginning of our careers, are not to be taken in silos. But in actuality, they're all leading up, connecting to the goal of what you want to accomplish and the things that you want to do.
And let's think about it. I mean, we're talking about stuff that exists today, but again, for our listening population out there, many young professionals listen to this show.
Okay.
And so for them, I mean, imagine a day, not too in the far distant future, maybe 5 years out, where this whole concept of paying your bills, or even money for that matter, is going to look so completely different than what it is right now. And to think that we're all going to get a chance to be part of this great revolution that's underway. So the three things, Wayne, that you learned from being in this uncharted space, what would you say? The three things that stand out to you that have allowed you to weather that storm?
No matter how bad things may appear, that there's always opportunity for growth and things ultimately work out. So the aspect and quality, one quality that I continue to work with and believe in is courage. Working in the corporate sector sometimes have created challenges for me personally and professionally. So one thing from an entrepreneur standpoint is courage. Courage helps me to get up and do what I need to do and not necessarily be paralyzed by fear. Because when we in charge of something that's different, it's so easy for us to kind of look at whether our own framework of what we can identify as limitations, or looking at what happened to somebody else can happen to me and realize the fact that can cause us to be paralyzed.
Right.
So courage is one aspect. The other aspect of the other thing that I've learned is that no matter what you want to accomplish, no matter what you want to do, it is very challenging to do it in a vacuum. That the relationships that we have, the relationships that consist of people, organizations, network are very, very important. And I've learned through this entrepreneurial journey that my network is very valuable. And the third thing that I've learned is the opportunity of just allowing myself to continue to be curious. The reason why I've done the things that I've done is because I'm curious by personality, and that curiosity causes me to try things differently or to do things differently and to kind of think outside the box. I relate that back to when I was a child. And I was, when you're coloring and something even obscure in grade school, that you get marks against you for coloring outside the lines. In retrospect, I think that children should be encouraged to do that.
I can only imagine what your coloring book looked like.
Oh yeah, it was quite detailed. It was very. I'm thinking about that in retrospect, but that's important also, because you realize the fact that as you kind of look outside the lines are going to change and you're going to grow. You cannot, and I've learned this, you cannot define everything that you're going to do and what you want to accomplish in a box. A lot of that will just come. So one of the things that I remember, I was working in grad school, I was going through my thesis on leadership. And one of the points that came up is that my thesis was with regards to my business. When I started my business, all the things that kind of take in consideration. So I did a business case, I did a marketing plan, I did all of that. In reality, I only used 5%, less than 5%, because the real life situation of when you're starting out your business could look very different from what you may learn, through your academic studies and all these different things. And it's that 5% that grew to where my business today looked very different from how I planned it initially and how it was structured.
And isn't that the case in life?
It is. Most things in life and many things in life, we say happens by accident, but I remember that you had mentioned years ago that's not really the case.
No, all things with purpose. I really do believe that.
That's one thing that I've learned from you.
And one thing that's remarkable about the relationship that Wayne and I have had is that we've had the chance to work together several times. In each one of those iterations, our relationship has grown.
Yes.
I think we've learned something from each other. One thing I've always appreciated about you specifically is that your appetite for feedback is quite high. And though people will, in general, talk about feedback and say how great it is and that they want it, but when it's delivered, as you know,
yes,
sometimes it doesn't feel that good.
Well, then we need to talk about that.
Yes.
So there was an example that I remember. It was in Long Island City. Mm-hmm. We were at Citigroup. We went to a restaurant to have lunch. Mm-hmm. And it was at that particular point that you delivered some very heavy feedback to me. And it was with regards to the role and position that I had was going to be, for me, that was going to be transitioned or eliminated. Mm. And the feedback that you gave me, and I realized later on, was honest and on point. The message was difficult to take, but it didn't cause me to fold. In fact, in retrospect, pulling from that information, it really empowered me. Mm-hmm. And I put a lot of pride in my work and the things that I do. But to realize that although good, it's just not where it needs to be at this time for you. And to deliver that message highlights a lot from you, as being a leader, because you delivered the message, and then ultimately that you left caused me to think about it, left the restaurant. But it was something that did not, I realized that was the message, that was the opportunity, but it had nothing to do with us personally.
It had to do with what was going on in the business and the evolution of the different types of things that were going to be happening.
That's right.
And how people fit. And the one thing that struck me about our structured relationship was that you wanted to color outside the lines.
Yeah.
Here's the path. This is the direction. And there's Wayne. Wayne is over here. He's not going against you, but he's not in the swim lane with everybody else. He's over here. And that entrepreneurialism was something that I found so remarkable, because going back to what you said earlier, it takes a lot of courage to be over here when everybody else is marching over here. And sometimes the consequences for being over here are tough.
That's right.
But you didn't let it get you down. And I remember my most poignant moment of our relationship was when we had to part ways again. And I think I said to you something along these lines: Wayne, do not take another one of these jobs. Don't do it. This structured corporate life is not for you. You need to be in a place where you can fly and be free and use all of these great God-given talents that you have.
I had some previous advice that I drew from that. One person had mentioned to me, in fact, it was in an academic setting. He had mentioned that in some situations, when things don't seem to work out, it could be that that's the opportunity that you need to be someplace else. Mm-hmm. And when you get those signals and those signs, sometimes we deny them and we ignore them.
Yes.
But we need to take note of them. And I looked at it, and that was a recurring theme that I've played back in my head, even as an entrepreneur. It was time to be someplace else. Mm-hmm. And rather than look at it negatively, I look at it positively, because it worked out that I needed to be someplace else. Yes. and have a much bigger impact. So that needing to be someplace else is because there was a bigger opportunity to impact not only the business, but to impact people.
Exactly.
And when you could impact people as well as the business, then that's gonna be a benefit to me, and because you're benefiting a much broader scope than just watching two banks make money.
Yes. All things with purpose.
Absolutely.
Now, if somebody wants to reach out to you, Wayne, where are they getting a hold of you at?
Well, my email is wbrown@walkergroup, WALKERNYC.com.
Okay.
That's probably the primary way to get a hold of me. I have a website and LinkedIn groups and all of that, but that's the primary ways through email.
Okay, great. And we'll put that in the show notes so
Perfect.
Everyone has that.
Perfect.
So will you come back?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Excellent.
absolutely. No, this is great. I appreciate you having me.
Well, God bless you, Wayne. Wow. What a great conversation with our friend, Wayne Brown, an extraordinary and accomplished networker. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll learn even more of his tricks of the trade.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Make Minutes Matter. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or click the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And let me know what you thought of today's conversation by following us on Instagram at Karen Gilhooly 1. That's Karen, Karen, Gilhooly, Gilhooly, and the number 1. Let's make every moment in your career truly matter. Have a great day.